Okay. As a reminder, this meeting will be recorded. Please limit use of the chat as those comments are not visible to the public, and we do not want a conversation going on separate from what is verbalized in the meeting. The regular meeting of the Capital Long Range Improvements Committee Transportation Task Force will now begin.
Good afternoon. My name is John Bernstein, and I am the chair of the Capital Long Range Improvements Committee Transportation Task Force. Before we begin, I'd like to note that this meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021 due to the declared local health pandemic. I will now call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum.
John Bernstein.
Here.
Brandt.
Here.
Scott Engel.
Here.
Annie Foster. I think she's going to be absent today. Risa Hustad.
Here.
Katie Jones. Matt Kazinka. Erica Mouter.
Here, and apologies, I'm gonna have to leave at 12:30.
All right. Dan Miller.
Here.
And then I just admitted George Montague into the meeting, but George Montague, we're taking roll call right now. Are you present?
Yes, I am. Thank you. And hello.
Todd Schumann.
Here.
Jeff Strand.
Present.
With that, there's 9 members present.
Guys here.
Oh, sorry about that guy. So there's 10 members present.
That's what I count. Okay. Thank you. With that, we will proceed to our agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access to the city's legislative information management system, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. Do we need to approve the agenda, Neil?
Do you want me to pull up the agenda?
No, it's got one item, so if we need to, I'll go through that, but do we need to do that or not?
I think we do have to do it. I mean, I would just bring the agenda and minutes together, and we can just do the roll call quick on it. It is what the clerk's office asks us to do. So.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda and the minutes in one motion.
Moved. Strand.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the amendments? Excuse me, is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
John Bernstein.
Aye.
Brandt.
Aye.
Engel.
Aye.
Annie Foster. Who's absent. Kai Goodmanstead. I think you're muted. What was that, Kai?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, thank you. Risa Hustad.
Aye.
Katie Jones.
Aye.
Inka.
Aye.
Erica Mouter.
Aye.
Dan Miller.
Aye.
George Montague.
Hi.
Todd Schumann.
Hi.
Chair Jeff Strand.
Aye.
That's 12 ayes.
All right, I'm glad we got that controversial vote out of the way. Go ahead, Jeff, what's up?
Yeah, I was wondering if the chair would be receptive of limiting any single comment discussion to not more than 5 minutes, so we can get through the lengthy list without. I don't want to debate it for an hour either.
I mean, it's a nice idea, but I want to make sure people get heard, and I think we can do this. You know, there's always I guess I would ask people to be respectful of one another. If something is starting to drag on, we can always call the question, which for those that may not know, if the question is called, there's no debate of that. It's a vote. It's an up or down vote, and if it is approved, then we that ceases the discussion about it. But let's try to not do that unless we're really getting behind. So hopefully everybody got the email today that I sent about between 9 and 10 this morning with the updated comments. For your reading pleasure, I've put all the ones that we've passed. There's nothing we need to do on that, so you can skip past the first 2 pages of the document that I sent to the 3rd page. And we'll start there. This was the water comment that got tabled at our first task force meeting that I've now authored, and Steve has looked at this too and made a couple of edits to it. And so I'll entertain a motion for this comment. So just to be
Josh,
clear.
can you read it first?
Yeah, I was actually trying to avoid that. That's why we sent this out in advance, and I've checked with Scott that he was able to read these in advance.
Okay.
So
Just wanted to make sure.
just for a time perspective, I'm going to try to get through things a little bit more quickly today. But to be clear, this is what WTR 12, which is the water distribution improvements project. So that's the relining of water mains, the replacement of valves and meters and other such things. So with that, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Dan Miller.
Is there a second?
Second. Strand.
Is there any discussion on the comment for water 12, water distribution improvements? Since I authored most of it, I'll speak to it quickly. I mean, I'm trying to capture a couple of things in there. You know, one, in that first paragraph, I'm basically trying to hold them accountable for what they said during their presentation, which is that they're doing an asset inventory for all of their assets, and that we're 1 year away from having that completed. So in a nice way, I'm publicly commending them for that and saying we're looking forward to seeing the report. So we kind of hold their feet to the fire on that. Then beyond that, I went back through and listened to her presentation, and they do address a lot of this stuff that previously they used to do this stuff based on water quality complaints, and now they're using a more statistical based system based on water pressure that they measure at hydrants, which in the grand scheme of things makes a lot of sense, but I don't think that they should ignore comments from residents who have serious water quality issues. So that's the point I'm making, is that they should continue to use the statistical thing, but when they get a lot of complaints from the same block, they ought to pay attention to that and move up that particular water main as well, even if it doesn't meet their other statistical stuff. And I just go through some of the details of that. And then finally, it's clear that with 72% of these pipes unlined, you know, they need to accelerate this program. They are asking for an increase from $9 million in the near years to $12 million a year in the out years of the current capital budget request. But clearly they need to do much more than this if they're going to get on top of this. As you know, one of the residents said, at the pace they're doing this, they're going to have to, you know, revisit pipes they've already relined before they get through all of the ones that haven't been lined at all yet at that pace. So that's the gist of the whole comment. Is there any other discussion on this? Hearing none, we'll call the vote.
John Bernstein,
Aye.
Grant,
Aye.
Scott Engel,
Aye.
Kai Goodnestead,
Aye.
Risa Hustad,
Aye.
B. Jones,
Aye.
Matt Kazinka,
Aye.
Erica Mauter,
Aye.
Ann Miller,
Aye.
George Montague,
Aye.
Todd Schumann,
Aye.
Mayor Jeff Strand.
Aye.
That's 12 ayes.
Okay, we're off and running. So if you flip the page, the next comment up for discussion is PV 122. This is Dowling Avenue, I-94 to First Street North, and Art 01, Art in Public Places. To be clear, this comment is referencing those projects, but what it's actually doing is asking for another project at a different site, which is 26th Avenue North across I-94. It's referencing what's being done at Dowling Avenue because it's asking that something similar done there. So there is no CBR for it yet, and the comment asks that either they just extend this off of this CBR or create its own CBR. So with that, is there a motion on this one?
So moved.
Yeah,
Sorry, I think I interrupted.
yeah, well, that's good. That's good.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Thank you. All right. Is there any discussion? George?
No, and I can tell you, I mean, Medtronic has gotten more dysfunctional as they've gotten bigger in that regard.
Could you mute yourself?
Hold on one second here.
Neil, can you mute him? There we go. All right. Is there any discussion on PV 122, the motion on the floor?
So I have my hand raised. I was just going to say thank you to Dan for simplifying this and just making it very explicit for the separate capital budget request or to expand the 122. So nice work.
Yeah, I should mention that Dan rewrote all of these ones that Dan authored. He's rewritten since our last meeting because we hadn't considered them yet. And yeah, I would second what Katie said. Any further discussion on this one? All right, hearing none. Neil, could you call the roll?
Yep. John Bernstein.
Aye.
Steve Brandt.
Aye.
Scott Engel.
Aye.
Amity Foster. Kai Goodnestad.
Aye.
Risa Hustad.
Aye.
Katie Jones.
Aye.
Matt Kazinka. Erica Mouter.
Aye.
Dan Miller.
Aye.
George Montague.
Aye.
Todd Schumann.
Aye.
Chair Jeff Strand.
Aye.
That's 12 ayes.
Motion passes. All right, moving on from that, the next one is PV 137. That's 29th Avenue Northeast from Central Avenue Northeast to Stinson. It's a pretty good leg. I think that, what is that, about a mile, Dan? Yeah. Okay, is there a motion on this one?
Strand.
Move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this one? I'm going to just jump in. I'm fine with the comment. I think the last sentence, if I understand what Dan's ask is, I think we could tighten up the last sentence a little bit. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but I think what you're saying is if MSA funding is restored, we want to see them prioritize this project as a result of that. And I think that could be stated more clearly if that's in fact what you mean.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Okay. So I would propose that as a friendly amendment if everybody's okay with it, and then I'll recognize Katie. Well, actually, if Dan's okay with it. Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, I just had a question about, did we get any information from Public Works as to why this was being delayed? Can you remind me?
It was MSA funding, and that's what they had said. That it was based on the reduced MSA funds as well as the Public Works workload.
Okay, thank you.
They're trying to catch up.
John, I think Scott is also in queue.
Thank you. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I think I'll probably support this, but several projects have been delayed. East 38th Street from Park or Portland all the way to 23rd Avenue has been delayed multiple years. So on the south side, and that runs through George Floyd Square. So I don't know. It seems like there's a financial crunch here. So if we're complaining about a specific roadway, I don't know, there's a lot of them that got delayed.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point and something we need to be careful about. The reason for me personally, the reason I'm okay with this comment is because it's not saying God damn it, move it up. It's saying, listen, if you get MSA funds back sooner, please, come back and look at this again, which I think is a little bit different. But I do think we need to be very careful about that. Between this comment and the one that's coming up next, we're basically asking them to move up $20 million worth of projects. These are each right around 10 million. One's 10.5 million, one's 11.5 million. Here's how I've rewritten the last sentence of this. I'll read the last couple of sentences and then my rewrite of the final sentence. A reconstructed 29th Avenue is included in the Audubon Park Neighborhood Small Area Plan and a separate 29th Avenue study in existence for over a decade. This past year, the neighborhood organization has been doing visioning discussions in advance of the now delayed 2024 reconstruction. Click asks that the city prioritize reconsideration of this delay if MSA funding is restored.
Sounds good.
Okay. So the author is fine with that amendment, so we're going to call that a friendly amendment. We won't need to vote on that. We'll just vote on this as amended if that's. But before we do that, I'll ask for any other discussion. Okay, hearing none. Neil, can you call the vote on this one?
John Bernstein.
Aye.
Steve Brandt.
Aye.
Scott Engel.
Aye.
Hi, Goodmistad.
Aye.
Risa Hustad.
Aye.
Katie Jones.
Aye.
Matt Kazinka.
Aye.
Erica Mouter.
Aye.
Dan Miller.
Aye.
George Montague.
Aye.
Sorry, what was that?
Aye.
George Montague.
Yep.
Aye, okay.
Aye. Sorry.
Todd Schumann.
Aye.
Chair Jeff Strand.
Aye.
That's 12 ayes.
Boy, we are just non-controversial today. I love it. All right, that takes us to PV 157. This is 33rd Avenue Northeast, central to Stinson. So picture this in your mind. We're talking basically 4 blocks further north of 29th Avenue, running exactly parallel. It's the exact same start finish from Central to Stinson. So with that, I will, and just for those of you that I assume everybody's aware, but this is one of the projects that was brought forward by a resident at the joint public hearing. So with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I move it for consideration or approval or whatever.
Is there a second?
Second. He said.
Okay, so is there discussion on this one? I'll jump in. I want to say a couple of things. I'm going to start with some broad comments that are not necessarily specifically tied to this one, that just relate to us as a committee making comments based on input from the public. First of all, I think it's important and really good that we continue to step up our efforts to get input from the public, and I'm all for that. At the same time, I think we need to be careful that, and I'm not, again, this is just broadly speaking, this isn't necessarily specific to this comment. I think we need to be careful that we don't necessarily need to go to bat for every public, for every comment or concern that we get at public input meetings. I think there's potentially an equity issue, and sort of an unintentional one that could result from this, right? I'm speaking in generalization, so nothing's ever perfect, but in general, the people who are the target of improving equity are not the people who can most easily make it to these types of meetings. So to the extent that people that aren't suffering from equity in the city come to these meetings and we further advocate for them, we may unintentionally be creating more inequity around the city. So I just want to point that out. As far as this specific project goes, first of all, again, it's concern that Scott raised that I share, that we can't, out of one side of our mouths tell the city, you got to be careful, you got to tighten up your belt, you don't have enough money to do all these projects, and then at the same time write a bunch of comments saying, accelerate this project, accelerate that project, et cetera, et cetera. I for the heck of it, went up and drove this road about a week ago just to check it out. To be fair, this is the time of year typically when it's probably in the best shape it's going to be in, right? Because it's been warm enough now that Public Works has gone through. They've patched up all the potholes, so there's lots of blacktop potholes on the road. But in the 1 mile of this thing from Stinson to Central, I noticed only one pothole that wasn't filled in. Lots of blacktop, as you would expect on a street like this, but and not in great shape by the Public Works' own admission. But I didn't feel the need to swerve to the other side of the road. A little bumpier than normal. I've seen worse around the city. So it's just an observation. Again, I think the way Dan has worded this comment, you know, it's pretty reasonable. It's not saying, God damn it, accelerate this. It's saying, hey, if you break this project into 2, would that make it more bite-sized? And could you do the part that's in worse? I personally didn't notice a huge difference, but you know, I'll defer to residents on that. Again, if you drove this thing in February, it might be a very different experience than when you drive it in May, because they can't, most of you probably know this, but you know, once those potholes, once that asphalt comes out of there, they can't do a thing until it's above 50 degrees. So other than throw some sand in there. So it's probably a lot rougher in the winter, especially if it's not covered with a layer of snow. Anyway, I think the idea that it's just saying, take a look at breaking this into 2, you know, and if that can accelerate it by a few years, that again seems pretty reasonable to me. It's not just a blanket move this up. I'll stop there and see if anybody else has any comments they want to make. All right, hearing none, we'll call the roll on this one.
John Bernstein,
Aye.
Steve Brandt,
Aye.
Scott Engel,
Aye.
Kai Goodnestead,
Aye.
Risa Hustad,
Aye.
Katie Jones,
No.
Matt Kazinka,
Aye.
Erica Mouter,
No.
Dan Miller,
Aye.
George Montague,
Aye.
Todd Schumann,
Aye.
Chair Jeff Strand.
Aye.
That's 10 ayes and 2 noes.
So I just want to say something quick. I'm not calling anybody out, but I know we're trying to get through these efficiently. If there's some no votes on this one, and honestly, I have a lot of respect for everybody's opinions in the group, and I'd be interested. It's too late now. We passed this one, but I would have been interested to have heard what the objections were. I might have been swayed. I don't know. I mean, so going forward, please don't. We're trying to be expedient today, but if there's something you object to or don't agree with, I would certainly like to hear people's opinions. So with that, we'll move forward to PV 158. This is Hennepin Avenue from Lake Street to Douglas Avenue. And I'll entertain a motion on this one. George, you don't need to raise your hand if you want to move it. You can just move it. You're muted.
I'm sorry.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. Dan Miller.
So the motion on the floor is to pass PV 158. This is Hennepin Avenue. Katie, go ahead.
Yeah, so I sit on the Engagement Advisory Committee for Hennepin Avenue, and we actually just had a meeting yesterday. And so I have some information on the first part of this to confirm the availability of the federal funding for 2024 that has been confirmed, given that the project has been delayed a year. I would also, so I'm going to speak against this comment. Just because there has been, multiple years of engagement on this corridor, and we have pretty clear direct city policy on what we're on the vision of for a lot of our, for our transportation system in general. And I think if we are trying to ask for, because of the pandemic, we need to, delay things and reevaluate, we would really need to be doing that on every corridor, on every street. And so I don't think it makes sense to call it out for this particular corridor.
Anybody else? Go ahead, George.
Yep. Hi. Yeah, and the intent, and Katie, I agree. A lot has been discussed on this. I guess my concern is that the data that's being used for the recommendation is from 2018, and a lot has changed, right? And so it's not a matter of delaying the project, but it's more a matter of looking at the expected traffic and commute patterns and in the area and how they may have changed, and reflecting that in the plan, just because there's a very limited window, right, of space, and we want to make sure that we use that in a way that is going to set the neighborhood up for continued success and the community up for continued success over the next 50 to 60 years, just as happened back in the 1950s. And that's all. It's not a matter of delaying anything. It's more a matter of using that time. And that's why I wasn't sure, and maybe the city report should reflect, because there is the discontinuity in the funding. It says funding is good for 2023, but the project's going to be in 2024. So maybe we can adjust that note in, or that detail in the report. And then similarly, it just doesn't say what's going to be done in that time frame. And it seems like we could use that added year to make sure that the solution meets the needs of the community, because there has been a fair amount of concern raised by the community, in particular where they've trialed it. Apparently, the delivery people are parking in the bus lane, and obviously commerce has suffered there. A lot of businesses have moved away from Hennepin. So there's a lot of concern that's been raised in the community. I just want to make sure that we represent the interests of the community as we put forth this recommendation.
All right, Dan, you're next, then Katie, then Scott.
Yeah, I guess I moved this or seconded it just to give George the opportunity to discuss it. As we all know, this has been a fractious project, and I would agree with Katie on most of, I'd probably be in alliance in everything she has said. But I do think that particularly the second paragraph is perhaps just a nod to, to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And so I appreciate that, and just wanted to say that. Thank you.
All right, Katie, then Scott.
I think Scott was actually ahead of me.
No, I watched the hands go up in the
Okay,
order.
okay. Just want to, make sure getting in line in the right spot. And I think just the point that was brought up around, well, we're using 2018 data to inform what's going on in the future. And I think that situation exists for a lot of the projects that we're assessing right now. And so again, just kind of come back to, I don't think that's if we're going to be making that argument for this particular street, we'd be needing to make it for all of the streets.
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I agree with Katie, and I just wanted to state that I am not going to support this as written, and I find there's a couple super specific things in here about like the bus lanes and parking that seems unusual for the clique to be commenting on. So.
All right, there are no other hands up, so I'm going to speak on this one as well. I'm going to speak in support of this comment. While the project may be controversial, I just don't see the comment as particularly controversial. It's not asking for anything other than confirmation that they're not going to lose federal funding. And even though Katie's confirmed it informally for us, I don't think having it in writing in the report hurts anything. And beyond that, it's asking for thoughtful consideration as they move forward. I just see nothing controversial about that, despite the fact that there are clear differences of opinion among the members of this task force on what the result of that should be. Everybody should be for thoughtful consideration. So I don't subscribe to the notion that if you ask, arguably this is one of the top 5 arteries in the city, and just because you ask for something on this does not mean they have to do it on every single street across the city. I don't buy that. And even if it does, isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, being more thoughtful about things and being revisiting things, particularly, I think we're going to look back on this pandemic and it's going to turn out to have been an inflection point on lots of human behavior. Whether you're talking about traffic or the way people get together or whether people shake hands I mean, it's just a long list and we don't know for sure what that will be yet. It's early, but if there ever was a time to slow down and be thoughtful, now would be it on just about everything in life, in my view. So I'll stop there. I'm voting in favor of this comment. Are there any other comments? Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for the thoughts so far. I think I just want to say I think I'm in alignment with Scott and Katie on this in terms of, I do think that, as John said, like stating that we want thoughtful consideration, of course, is appropriate in every case. But I do think that this comment as written sort of gives a very clear indication of what, or it feels to me like sentences like highlighting the impact of the tree canopy, the bus lanes consuming the available space, and sort of writing it as that they won't be used very much, I think feels to me indicates a preference towards a certain outcome in this planning, more so than just saying this should be looked into further. So for me, that doesn't feel that's not a sentiment that I share and I wouldn't want to express. So I would vote no on this, or I am planning to vote no on this for that reason.
Okay, we've got Dan, then Risa, then George.
Yeah. I would just offer that perhaps we could table this and that George could maybe come back and kind of clean this thing up a little bit and maybe remove some of the language that people are having trouble here with, and just to focus on the sense that you'd like this to continue to be thoughtfully discussed based upon the pandemic, etc. Thank you.
So go ahead, then, George.
We second Dan's motion.
No, let's just keep going with the discussion for now. I'm not considering that a motion at this point. We'll let George talk to it in a minute. Go ahead, Risa.
Yeah, so just insofar as so many projects that have considerations for non-motorized transport are delayed indefinitely with asks for more data, I will also be voting no for this particular comment, though I really appreciate the ideas of having the right data and making sure that we're making informed decisions. This is going to be a no vote for me.
Go ahead, George.
Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I delayed getting unmuted. Yeah, so I appreciate this. This is my first comment, so I wasn't quite sure how to approach it. Just the reason I gave those examples is those examples were provided to me as I talked with members of the community and as well as people that live in the area, as well as people that have businesses in the area. And so I just wanted to give those as examples of some of the concerns that people felt should be may want to be considered as part of that. It wasn't advocating any particular view, and if we did table, we could take out those specific examples. So just raising that as a possibility. So, but I understand some of the concerns that are being raised and views that are being raised by others of the committee as well.
So let me jump in from a process perspective. This is our last task force meeting on comments, so I don't know that it works to table it. Maybe what we can do in a more informal way is, George, if you just want to withdraw it, you can bring it back next week for the full committee. We'll probably go consider comments that have been passed by the task forces first, but every year comments come through that didn't come through the task force. And I don't think we're doing any kind of end run around it. It's just the process right now. You would like to rewrite this. Everybody else, I think, it doesn't sound like it's going to pass today anyway. We can still do an up or down vote if you want. If you want to withdraw it and rewrite it and bring it back to the full committee, I think you can do that.
Okay, no, I can withdraw it, and if anybody wants, it sounds like there may be some concern or hesitance in any consideration, in any case, but be happy to withdraw, and if anybody had any thing that they wanted to incorporate into, just shoot me a note, and I'd be happy to do that as well, right? Again, I'm trying to represent the interest of the committee rather than my personal interests in this comment.
Go ahead, Jeff. Jeff?
You're muted.
You're muted, Jeff. There we go. So just for everybody, I think there's a delay in Teams. So when you to unmute yourself, just wait. It takes an odd amount of time. It's awkward.
Okay. Good. I would suggest perhaps refer it without a favorable or unfavorable recommendation. That way it goes to the full committee next week, and then we'll have it in place. So rather than tabling, could I move that? I'd move that we refer it without,
well, I don't know. I think George wants to rewrite it. So here's what I would propose. And I'll propose this for any other comments. After today, we're going to submit something. I'm going to submit a document like this for our meeting next week, which will be forwarding on all of the comments that have been approved by the Transportation Task Force. If anybody comes up with another comment that they would like to have considered, send it to me, and I will have a section at the end of the document that is comments that have not yet been approved by the task force that the committee can take up. And so that'll give George a chance to rewrite it if he wants to, and anybody else also has the same opportunity with any other comments that we don't get to today. That sound okay?
Fine with me.
Okay. All right, so we'll consider PV 158 withdrawn. And that moves us to BR 101. This is major bridge repair and rehabilitation. So just to be clear for everybody, I left it in there for you to be able to see. This, Jeff is updating a comment that we've made in the past. So I'll entertain a motion on this.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right. Any discussion on this comment, BR 101, the major bridge repair and rehab? Going once, going twice. All right, let's call the roll on this one.
John Bernstein.
Aye.
Steve Grant. Steve Brandt. Scott Engel.
Aye.
Let's see, Kai Goodmanstead.
Aye.
Risa Hustad.
Aye.
Katie Jones.
Aye.
Matt Kazinka.
Aye.
Erica Mauter. Erica Mauter.
She had to leave at 12:30.
Dan Miller.
Aye.
George Montague.
Aye.
Todd Schumann.
Aye.
Chair Jeff Strand.
Aye.
That's 10 ayes.
Grant votes aye.
It's 11 ayes.
That comment passes. Okay. That moves us to PV 122, Dowling Avenue, I-94 to First Street North. I'm just, the only thing I'm hesitating about, it's got nothing to do with the comment, it's how we're going to title these, because we've got another PV 122 comment that we passed that really is not specifically PV 122, right? It's the overpass north of there. I guess we can deal with that later. That's not really it's a relatively minor detail. Go ahead, have a thought on this?
Yeah, Chair Bernstein, I would suggest that the earlier comment is maybe more appropriate as a general because it's actually suggesting a new CBR, a new way of looking at things. So we'll see where if this one goes or doesn't go, but if there's an issue that arises, then I think was it Dan Miller? I think his could be a general comment.
I don't think I agree that it's a general comment. It's clearly a transportation comment because it's basically asking for a transportation CBR, but it's not specific to a CBR at this point, except for the fact that he's sort of suggesting one possibility is to just piggyback off of this existing CBR. We could maybe title it with art and public spaces first in PV 122 or something like that. That might solve it. Anyway, I don't think we need to linger on that right now. The PV 122 comment that we're about to entertain is entirely different, and so I'll entertain a motion on that.
I'll move it.
Second.
Author.
All right. Is there any discussion on this comment?
Go
ahead.
Okay. I don't know if you're looking at hands. Okay. Yeah. So, Jeff, I'm curious what this is explicitly asking for.
Well, through the chair, I'll say that the purpose is that, as I recall, the project was not in our report last year, and so it was profiled in 2018-19. There was a gap, and then speaking to the work that our colleague Mr. Brandt did, I appreciated his research, and I just think that my thinking is that it's prudent when dealing with the elected officials who are looking at a high per mile cost to just highlight that and bring it forth. I think it makes the committee look intelligent and well-informed, which I think it is. Not everyone agrees, but that's my way of thinking in my experience.
Can I just clarify? So are you saying it was not in the 2020 report? I don't know if you heard me.
Jeff, did you hear that question?
I heard your question, and I had looked previously, and I do not recall seeing it, but I'm not infallible.
Let me speak to this briefly. I mean, I don't think every comment we make has to have a pointed ask to it. It could, the way I read this comment, it's basically saying, we're glad you're doing this project. We think it's important, and thank you. And I think that's okay to have comments like that. And to the extent, you know, that in a circular way, that's sort of Jeff's way, very polite way of sort of gentle pressure to not take it out of the budget in the future.
Okay, that makes sense. I just was trying to understand that. So that it's to pressure to not take it out of the budget. That's really the purpose, and to say voice our
support,
higher support for it. Okay, cool.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I have nothing to dispute about this comment, other than that this project is moving like a freight train, and so in some ways I'm not sure if we need to do it. I like what you said in a short comment of just support for it, and that the details and all this stuff, they're ripping through this right now, and I just don't know if it's kind of repetitive. It's not I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just thinking it may not be necessary. Thanks.
Go ahead, Steve.
I think it's helpful to have this comment included. And my thinking is there may be council members who look at the cost of this project, as I did, and think, wow, why is this costing 3 or 4 more times than a typical street reconstruction on a per mile basis? And I think there's a very good explanation for it. I mean, they're basically redoing all the utilities. They're adding a parkway, doing rail crossings and so on. And I think it's just a good defensive move on behalf of this very needed project to point that out.
Just to be aware, to realize that there are 2 Dowling projects. This one is between, it's basically overpass the first. So that's a small contained project. It's not the big one that goes up to Thomas that I think you've been concerned about, Steve. Yeah, there's a lot of work getting done around the Upper Harbor Terminal, through it, down 33rd Avenue, and they are rolling. And yeah, so thanks.
Go ahead, Steve.
I'll pass.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion on this one? Seeing none. Neil, can you call the roll on this one, please?
John Bernstein,
Aye.
Steve Brandt,
Aye.
Scott Engel,
Aye.
Ty Goodnestead,
Aye.
Risa Hustad,
Aye.
Katie Jones,
Aye.
Matt Kazinka,
Aye.
Dan Miller,
Aye.
George Montague,
Aye.
Todd Schumann, Chair Jeff Strand.
Aye.
Get 11 ayes.
All right, that motion passes. That takes us to TR 021 traffic signals and TR 022 traffic safety improvements. This again is a rework of a comment that's been made in the past. And Risa, do you have something that's separate from this?
I just have a friendly amendment on this one if we're rolling into it, but let me know if we need to make a motion first.
Yep. Do I hear a motion on this one?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Risa, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick point. I believe that the last sentence is intended to say, avoid potential confusion and to prevent unintended consequences of making intersections less safe rather than safer. I'm unsure. Go ahead.
Sound okay to you?
Jeff, you're muted.
Yes, that is correct. It was safe. Make intersections less safe rather than safer, or not safe.
If I understood Risa correctly, she's suggesting deleting rather than safer, and I think I agree. I don't think it adds any. It doesn't add to the understanding. It's more likely to confuse depending on how somebody reads it.
Well, additionally, I believe that the intention was to write intersections less safe rather than safer, but the text says intersections less sail rather than safer.
Yeah, right, I see that as well. But Jeff, are you okay with striking rather than safer?
Yes.
Okay. Katie, go ahead.
Yeah, Jeff, thank you for bringing this forward. And I was wondering if I could add another friendly amendment. Well, it would be somewhat substantial, so I want to get your thoughts on this. But I think the underlying problem here is that Public Works is relying on the MUTCD, which is a Federal Highway Administration guideline that does not have a pedestrian section to it. It is, so there's these federal highway guidelines, which then we're applying to city streets, and they're out of they're not the right context. And these are things that I've just been learning more about. And I think fundamentally those guidelines, which are now 10 years old and are being updated right now. The comments were just actually accepted, I think, on Friday, or last comments closed. The fundamental problem is that I think our transportation action plan goals are going to come up into conflict with these guidelines, and we're not going to be able to meet those goals if we aren't willing to pilot and go beyond what those guidelines are. I don't know how to address that, if that's even possible to address in this comment, but I'd be curious your thoughts.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, Chair and members, this is basically from firsthand experience, and one of my neighborhood resident neighbors, Julie Voigt, sent in a comment from her personal experience, and we did have very detailed comments from Mr. Peter Schmidt, which I think harkens to what the chair said about the comments like this. I think this resident should think about applying to the CLIC in the extensive detail that was provided through the public hearing. But I guess the real point of this is we've spoken to this issue before. I am wholeheartedly in agreement with the prioritization that the city council has adopted. I'm not trying to fight that battle. Yet I am trying to, as a resident of the north side, where our council member has admitted that and I agree, we do have somewhat poor drivers. And we need to do driver education and training. But when you have the near side sign and you don't have a far side, what happens is the people will go around cars. I've experienced it. I experienced it just this week, as a matter of fact. And somebody turning, and then there could be a T-bone collision. So I think I'm just saying we should transition into this. Maybe you have duplicative far side, near side for a time until people adjust. Or the other project will be a Hennepin County, but the Osseo Bridge right now is really a hazard, where you have a yellow striped so-called middle area that nobody's supposed to drive in, except that the people who are in a real hurry pass buses into the opposing lanes. And, we just see all of this extremely dangerous driving. So in response to Katie's question, I guess I'm just trying to highlight this further and say that I'm in full support of piloting these changes. But I think, as you pointed out several years ago, we need to do a lot of education, and perhaps we need to do duplicative signage or other programs to make the public aware, because it affects pedestrians, people who are rolling, transit users, all users, and it does affect safety. Did that answer the question somewhat?
All right, I'm going to recognize Katie, and I'm going to put myself in queue.
Yeah, and thanks, Jeff. I think this is exactly what I would encourage, is we need to be piloting new things. And I think where the public commenter was bringing in more data around the MUTCD and like where the actual barriers are. And I think, so I'm wondering, we've made this comment kind of before and we didn't get much response back. And so I'm trying to figure out what is that actual barrier. And it seems to be these guidelines are what Public Works is following. And we need to actually call out that we understand where these are, and we're not going to make our goals if we keep following these guidelines to the T. And I would almost like to add something in there about that.
So I just want to say a couple of things about this. Anecdotally, I'm in agreement with Jeff. I don't think near side signals is a good idea. I watch how people drive around the city, and I think there's a really good chance that people will drive. They don't even think about it, right? They pull up to the intersection until they can see in both directions, which is usually well into the crosswalk and well past any signage. And at that point, they're going to commit all sorts of violations because there's no signs for them to see it. I don't really want to debate that with other people. I know there's different views about that. More importantly, unless I heard Public Works wrong, they responded to this during our presentation and said that they have seen studies about this or studied it, I forget what it was, and they don't believe it works. And I think at a certain point, we as a committee need to allow the engineers that work for the city to do their jobs and accept their response. So, yeah, I'll stop there. Any further discussion on this one before we vote? You got Katie.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to hammer this too much, but that, I've been in conversations with them, and the studies that they cite are decades upon decades old. So I have concerns about that, and that they're not willing to look at what works in other places. And so that's why I'm really wanting to encourage them to to think more creatively.
Go ahead, Risa. And then Jeff.
Yeah, this is, I also don't want to sit on this too long, so feel free if this is if I need to take this question offline, but the language here doesn't sit with me super well, and I do wonder, what does it will look like in a process to add language to this comment rather than passing it as is today.
Jeff, did you want to be recognized?
Yeah, my question is, is there a friendly amendment at the ready, like a one sentence or not?
I don't have a friendly amendment, and my understanding is we don't have a friendly amendment available. But I don't want to delay this comment. But I just don't know the process for adding to it if we don't have something ready right now.
Well, I'll speak to that. We're doing pretty well. We have a half hour left. We have one comment after this. So I'm going to propose this. Jeff, we can either move forward with a vote on this, or if you want to withdraw it and allow a friendly amendment, we can come back to it after the next comment.
Could we, I'd like to move forward with it because it's been something that I've been working on, but if the proposers of the friendly amendment could just sketch something out during today's meeting, I am certainly receptive.
I can do that right now.
So, Jeff, are you okay with withdrawing it with the idea that we're going to come back to it today?
Yes, Chair, I would temporarily withdraw it and come back later today during the same meeting.
So we will come back to this at no later than 1:15. So that we'll have at least 15 minutes for it. All right, so moving on from this one. The next one is titled 2018-2019 Click Report Comment, Off-Street Recreational and Commuter Path Rehabilitation. Dan is the author of this one. The first part of the comment is, I assume, word for word what was in the report in the past. Dan, it's not entirely clear to me where you want this. Is this sentence supposed to go at the end of the comment that's already there?
I don't know. I just thought that I saw this when I was reviewing previous comments. I think it's a helpful comment because this program doesn't exist. And I know it's been talked about in the Bicycle Advisory Committee, but it doesn't exist at the moment. And that if anything, it may be better referred to as the All Ages and Abilities Network, which is inside the Transportation Action Plan and includes both paths and streets, bike boulevards, Minneapolis Parks and Recreation Board, trails, so it'd be all inclusive.
Dan, I'm going to stop you there. I'm just trying to figure out what we're moving before we move it, before you get into a lot of discussion about it. And it's not clear to me the way this is written, whether you're asking to have that sentence tacked onto the end or...
For the time being, yes.
Okay, so that the motion, I'll entertain a motion for the comment that's there with that new sentence added to the end.
Second.
I
Josh,
think
I'd move approval.
Second.
Graham.
Second.
All right, so the motion's on the floor. Is there any discussion on this one? Go ahead, Steve.
I would like to offer a friendly amendment, if Dan is willing, that would request that Public Works report back to CLIC in 2022 on its progress toward a pavement condition index assessment and rehabilitation program. Dan, is that acceptable?
Yes.
All right, let me recognize Jeff and then we'll come back to how we're going to do that. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yes, and I would suggest that so it isn't lost, that the new language should be the lead part of the comment.
I think that's a good suggestion. Oh, there's nobody else in queue, so I'm going to jump in here. I'm not sure we necessarily should call out specific network that they should do. I think we want them to do this all across the city, just as they do for pavement. And I'd rather see us tell them to do that rather than narrowly focusing on, or somewhat narrowly focusing on one network. And in addition to that, I was just thinking about this about a month ago. I don't know how specific or detailed we want to get, but I was out rollerblading, and you know, if you rollerblade on these, a pavement condition index for cars is clearly different than it is for bikes, and is clearly different than it is for somebody on rollerblades, right? A crack that doesn't mean a thing for somebody on a bike can send somebody to a face plant on rollerblades. And I'd love to see us have some language in here that addresses that somehow, because those are, you know, people will use those paths a lot of different ways, whether it's a scooter or a bike or rollerblades. And you know, if they do the way they do the pavement condition index now and only focus on bikes, which is likely what they would do, you know, it may not speak very well to, you know, how the condition of the path for other types of transportation. And so I'd like to see some language in there to suggest that this needs to be all encompassing, that in that sense.
So with the group, I'm willing to take this and work on it and return it with the stuff. Steve, if you could if that's agreeable, Steve can send me his language, and I'll just work it out with everything that everybody has said, if that's helpful.
So what we could do with this one is what we're doing with George's comment, which is, Dan, you can rewrite this with the help of whoever wants to contribute, and this one will get forwarded on to the full committee as an unapproved comment, which, you know, I don't think this one's going to be super controversial. It's been passed before. So Steve, go ahead.
I think I would just like to also add the park board to this resolution, since it maintains many of the off-road commuter and recreational trails. So we can work on that, Dan.
Yeah, one of the keys to this one might be how it's titled. All right. Are you guys ready to revisit the previous comment?
The traffic safety improvements?
Yes.
Yeah, I can, I'll drop this in the chat and then I'll also read it aloud. And I mean, when you said we, I have not shown this to Jeff yet. So he can also bat it away if he'd like. But basically, I'm adding in, after the word crosswalk in the second paragraph, basically a new paragraph that would say, CLIC commends the city seeking and using state and national standards and guidelines when developing infrastructure. At the same time, CLIC understands that the City Transportation Action Plan goals and needs may be outpacing existing guidelines. Particularly the MUTCD guidelines are more than a decade old, and it does not have a pedestrian section nor prioritize pedestrian needs as the city's Transportation Action Plan does. For that reason, it behooves the city to take measures to pilot new strategies, even if they may not currently fit the MUTCD guidelines.
Okay, so I'm going to consider this motion back on the floor and ask Jeff if he considers that a friendly amendment.
I do.
Okay. Is everybody clear on what's on the floor at the moment? Go ahead, Steve.
Katie, could I ask that, or Jeff, that we just spell out MUTCD for the benefit of those people who will get the report outside of Public Works,
yes,
who aren't familiar with the term? Thank you.
Manual on uniform traffic control devices.
Yeah, we know, but not everybody does.
Hang on, guys. My Teams is acting up here. I'm trying to get the list back. There we go. All right, Risa, and then George.
Yeah, I just want to say really quickly that I'm really happy that Jeff wrote this. I'm really happy that Katie is working on a friendly amendment, and I just really appreciate everybody for explaining to me quickly the process of getting something like this updated. So I just thanks all.
This is our very informal, loose Robert's rules, but it seems to work. So, all right, George, go ahead.
Yep. So a question on regarding the MUTCD guidelines, are we required to, is the city required to follow them? Or are they just suggestions, or what's considered by some to be best practice? Because by not following them, do we expose ourselves to funding limitations or cuts or legal liability? What implications are there for not, for doing what we think is right, but may not meet the guidelines?
So that's a great question. And it's, so if I can talk or reply to that, my understanding, and I will say I'm not an expert on this, but my understanding is that they are guidelines. We do not have to follow them. And there are actually several instances where we have not. For example, the at Loring Park, when we painted the rainbow crosswalk, that was like explicitly like not allowed by MUTCD guidelines. So there are the city does follow MUTCD guidelines because it does give them liability cover. And a lot of, and that is something that we want. And that's why I do want to call out that it's a good thing for us to generally follow these. But where we're outpacing the guidelines, it makes sense to pilot and to test new things.
All right, so we've got a motion on the floor, which is the comment as you see it there with the addition of the third paragraph, a new third paragraph as read by Katie. Is there any further commenting on this before we vote? Seeing none. Neil, can you call the roll?
John Bernstein.
Aye.
Steve Brandt.
Aye.
Scott Engel.
Aye.
Kai Goodmanstead.
Aye.
Teresa Hustad.
Aye.
Katie Jones.
Aye.
Matt Kazinka.
Hi.
Erica Mouter.
Aye.
Dan Miller. I think he took off. George Montague.
Aye.
Todd Schumann.
Aye.
Chair Jeff Strand.
Aye.
I have 10 ayes.
All right, the comment passes. Katie, could you email me that paragraph, please? Thank you. All right, that takes us to the very last section of this, most of which I think we've taken care of. This was all submitted by Jeff, so Jeff, I'll ask for your clarification on these. It strikes me that the traffic 21 comment that you're, the traffic signals comment that you're addressing here was not addressed by the previous comment. This is a slightly different issue. Is that correct?
That is correct. And Public Works did address it, but without, getting into discussing without moving it, I think it is a legitimate safety issue along the LRT corridor for people who are biking or walking, or pedestrians who are like me, focusing on their phone. And the light will be green and the train is going through, and not just the tail end necessarily. So, it's
It's
been in the report.
We've got 20 minutes here, so we may as well use it. We can reinsert this comment as is. I'm not sure this is one that would need any particular updates to it. It doesn't strike me as one that does. So if someone wants to make a motion, I'm all ears. Do we need to read this one? Did everybody get this far in the document?
Are we talking about TR 21?
Yes.
Okay.
And Chair, to be clear, it was the yellow highlighted parts that were not addressed previously.
Well, if there's not a motion, and then I guess what I would suggest is that if anybody wants to write something on this, they will get forwarded to the full committee as not having been passed. I'll include it in that document for next week. So the cutoff for that will probably be next. Yeah, we'll stick with the same deadline. But let's say 5 o'clock Tuesday.
Well, John, if it's there, can I move? I'll move it. Just the yellow part, starting with a continued area to given a green light for
Okay.
TR 21.
Since we are doing well on time, I'll just read it for everybody's sake. So this is TR 021 traffic signal. The proposed comment is a continued area of concern is the timing of when a light turns green in conjunction with light rail. CLIC members have observed the light turning green before a light rail train has finished passing through an intersection. We encourage Public Works to work with Metro Transit to re-examine if an additional lag in timing may be needed to ensure a train clears the intersection before cars, buses, bikes, and pedestrians are giving a green light. We wouldn't want to lose our chair of the CLIC committee over this issue, right? I might have added that last sentence. Kidding. That's the comment striking my last sentence there. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this one?
I would just say, well, a continued area of concern. I guess it still fits even without the first paragraph. So never mind.
All right, hearing no discussion on this one. Neil, can you call the roll?
John Bernstein,
Aye.
Steve Brandt,
Aye.
Scott Engel,
Aye.
Kai Goodmestead,
Aye.
Risa Hustad,
Aye.
Katie Jones,
Aye.
Matt Kazinka,
Aye.
Erica Mauter,
Aye.
let's see, George Montague,
Aye.
Todd Schumann,
Aye.
Chair Jeff Strand,
Aye.
10 ayes.
Okay, that passes. That takes us to the Parkway paving program. And we have a comment about this, but this is a different comment that addresses. So the comment we made previously was about the pedestrian markings on parkways. This comment is specifically about whether this is the Parkway paving program. So they consistently, for as long as I can remember, ask for $750,000 a year for this. And so the gist of this is that really enough, or do they need to increase that amount? And asking for an inventory. It seems like it's still a relevant comment to make. Steve?
I support the comment. The only question I have is, I'm aware that the park board did a inventory of the parkway system in 2019. And I don't think with the pace they've been paving, it's changed that much. So I wonder if we need to ask them to maybe just to update its inventory of the parkway system rather than do a whole new inventory.
Okay. Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, I believe I remember asking Adam about this, and they are going to be doing a master planning process for all of the parkways next year.
Okay.
So, in a way, that may be part of the process.
Okay.
I should have done it at the start. Let me read. I'm assuming, Jeff, what you're proposing here is the part that's in yellow.
Correct.
All right, let me just read that for everybody. Based on the public input received along with the direct experience of several CLIC members, the committee asked that Public Works inventory the parkway system. It should then determine whether the $750,000 annual expenditure is adequate to deliver this program and to avoid potentially damaging and dangerous roadway conditions along the parkway. Is there any further discussion on this one? Go ahead, Scott.
I don't know. I feel like this is too vague, or what we want to know is, or what we think is that 750 is not enough based on our experience, right? So don't we want to be a little more direct in this comment?
I mean, I'll speak up on this. I think it is doing that. I guess I think the last phrase of the second sentence where it says to avoid potentially damaging and dangerous roadway conditions along the parkway, instead of saying that, it might be more effective if we refer to that something about the pace at which they're doing this and whether they're going to get all of the road condition back to where it ought to be before they have to start all over again, you know, with the stuff they did 10 years ago or whatever it is. Something along those lines.
Yeah, Click has noticed that, you know, anecdotally, that the parkways are in terrible shape, and 750 it only gets us a mile a year. I mean, let's move it along. I don't know.
Do we want to recognize that we understand that MPRB is going to be undertaking a master planning process? Because I think part of the consideration may be, well, it may not be a road going forward. They may be, I mean, it's park land. They can choose to use it as they'd like. It may be functionally different.
I'm not sure whether what you just said is factually accurate, but even if it is politically, I don't think there's any way those will stop being parkways. So I don't share that concern. I think as far as what you said about the master plan, I mean, we could highlight it in here. I think it's for me, it's kind of equivocal. You can either highlight it and kind of commend them that they're going to do that, which in a way holds their feet to the fire. But by asking for an inventory, I kind of view that as pretty similar. So it sort of does the same thing, but I could go either way on that. I do think what Scott suggested and could be addressed in the second half of the last sentence by just saying whether, you know, something along, I was trying to wordsmith it as we're doing this. Here, this might do it. So the last sentence would say, it should then determine whether the $750,000 annual expenditure is adequate to deliver this program in a timely manner. I think that's better. I think it could be even tighter and more specific, but that at least suggests the issue around, you know, 1 mile a year. They may be back to having roads in disrepair before they've gotten all the way through. Any other thoughts on this? Do people like that edit, or do you want to keep it the way it is?
I like the edit.
Jeff, are you okay with it?
I am, and then I think Steve Brandt's comment about update its inventory.
Yeah, and maybe that addresses what you were saying too, Katie. If we say update the inventory, that sort of suggests that they've done some work already and they've got more work to do.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'll read the comment one more time with all those revisions, and then we can see if there are any final comments before we vote. Based on the public input received along with the direct experience of several CLIC members, the committee asked that Public Works update their inventory of the parkway system. It should then determine whether the $750,000 annual expenditure is adequate to deliver the program in a timely manner. Any further discussion on that one? All right, Neil, go ahead, Steve.
It just, I believe the last assessment of condition was done by the park board, if I'm remembering correctly. So perhaps we should be inclusive in that, in asking about that.
Asking about what?
For the update of the assessment. Not just Public Works, but Public Works and Park Board.
Oh, I see. You want us to include Park Board there?
Yeah.
But the Public Works, the agreement that the city has is Public Works maintains the parkways for the
They
parks.
maintain them, but they don't necessarily plan them. I mean, up before the point of engineering.
I see what you're saying. All right, so I've just inserted, so it now reads, after the first comma, the committee asks that Public Works and the Park Board update the inventory, not there, the inventory of the parkway system.
Thank you.
Anything further on this one? Okay, Neil, can you call the roll?
John Bernstein,
Aye.
Steve Brandt,
Aye.
Scott Engel,
Aye.
Kai Goodmestead,
Aye.
Risa Husted,
Aye.
Katie Jones,
Aye.
Matt Kazinka,
Aye.
Erica Mauter,
Aye.
George Montague,
Aye.
Todd Schumann,
Aye.
Chair Jeff Strand.
Aye.
It's 11 ayes.
That passes. That takes us to the final two comments that are on here, which are bike protected bikeways program and traffic 22. We obviously addressed traffic 22, and I would argue we actually addressed bike 28 in that comment too, although we didn't. It's not titled that way, and I would suggest that maybe we want to make that change, is to include bike 28 in part of the title, because that's the part about educating people when they make all of these changes, so that drivers and bikers and everybody else knows what they're supposed to do. Go ahead, Jeff.
I have a comment about a previously adopted, so I'd like to wait until you finish this section.
Okay, so Jeff and Katie, as sort of co-authors of that traffic comment, how do you feel about us adding bike 28 to the title of it? Katie's a yes. Are you okay with that, Jeff?
I'm fine.
All right, I don't think we need a motion for that. We'll just make that change. And then Jeff, so that gets us through the entire document.
Okay.
Well done, 123, and I'll recognize you, Jeff, for whatever you'd like.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you, Chair. Chair, would you mind? I'd like to ask if you would determine unanimous consent for a change in the TR21. I think the ordering properly should be at the end of that one that was adopted before buses, bikes, and pedestrians and cars. So I just would like to make that change in ordering with it doesn't change anything, any substance.
Where are you in the comment?
I'm on the TR21 comment that passed 10-0.
Right, where in are you?
Right at the end, it says to ensure a train clears the intersection before buses, bikes and pedestrians, and cars. I would just change the ordering.
Why am I not seeing that? This is TR21. Do we have more than one TR21 comment? No. Oh, yes, we do have more than one TR21 comment. All right, now I'm with you. Sorry.
Okay.
So,
okay.
You want it to be buses? Read it again.
Bikes and pedestrians, comma, and cars. That order.
Buses, bikes, pedestrians, and cars, that order?
Correct.
All right, so I'll ask for unanimous consent on that. You want to call the roll quick? We've got time.
John Bernstein.
Aye.
Steve Brandt.
Aye.
Scott Engel.
Aye.
Kai Goodmestead.
Aye.
Risa Husted.
Aye.
Katie Jones.
Aye.
Matt Kazinka.
Aye.
Erica Mauter.
Aye.
George Montague.
Aye.
Todd Schumann.
Aye.
Chair Jeff Strand.
Aye.
It's 11 ayes.
Okay. That puts us all the way through the document. Does anybody want to be recognized for anything? Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, this is sort of not specifically related to this, but I saw in the email today that from Neil that our ranking forms are due tomorrow. And somehow I got it in my head that it was due on the 24th of May. Did I have that wrong? I was hoping for the weekend to finish it up, but.
Let me respond to that. You did have it wrong, and I did too. I actually thought it was a week from tomorrow, the 27th, and I've actually sent an email to the executive committee and staff requesting that we push that deadline back a week from tomorrow. I haven't gotten a response yet, but I think we can do that without that impacting the full committee's work. We're going to have our hands full next week with dealing with comments. We won't even get to, if we start messing around with looking at how everybody rated projects, we won't get through all the comments. So I think I don't think you and I are the only ones in this boat, Scott. And in my 15 years on this committee, people notoriously turn these things in late. And so I think if we just give people an extra week now, that will lighten up the load a bit for everybody, and we'll have a full meeting next week dealing with comments. And then the only other issue on this is that, as Scott and others will know and Steve and Jeff, from the subcommittee we formed last fall that worked on revising the scoring, one of the revisions we made was to operating costs, which are now you're supposed to look at those operating costs per year times the useful life of the project divided by the total cost of the project. So the total operating costs, savings or expenditures as a percent of the total project. When we made that change, at least as one of the authors of that, and I think Steve would agree with me, what we had envisioned is that number would be provided in the CBR by the requesting departments. Because the CBRs didn't get updated this year for lots of different reasons, that did not occur. So the ask that I've made of Amelia and the department, which I don't know if they'll be able to do it or not, is that some of us can go through and do that. Other people may be less financially, literate, or however you want to put it, and that may be more challenging. Regardless of your ability to do it, the other issue is that there's quite a bit of data missing from the CBRs to do it on some of these. So my thought was, if somebody on staff could go through and make that calculation, and as they come across ones where the data is not there, at least make one request to the author of the CBR to try to get that data. And if they're obviously going to have to come back with it pretty quick, or we won't have it, but it's better than we'd be able to do individually. And that way, one person on staff does these calculations instead of all 33 of us doing them. And then you can take that spreadsheet that would get distributed, and to my understanding, the points that we suggested there they're not a hard and fast. It's more of a suggested range. So each rater can go through and assign the points based on those numbers that are calculated by somebody on the city staff. I see Matt's got his hand up. I just want to give Robert a chance to respond to that if he's got anything to say. He may not yet. I don't know if they've talked about this.
No, and we have. Thank you. We have seen the emails come in. I think as they started popping up, we had a chance to look at what the operating cost calculations are, and similar to how the CBRs have come in past years. There's just a lot of the information is vague and high level. I think for folks to be able to effectively do a calculation consistently across like all the projects. I am curious, in the Human Development Committee, which got out early, which enabled me to pop over to this one, raised similar questions about it. The consensus there was that essentially the information that's provided is the information that gets used in order to do the rankings. And so projects that don't provide information, but that Capital Long Range Improvement Committee members know, for example, is it new infrastructure? It's going to have new costs. Results in a negative ranking. New infrastructure or replacement infrastructure reconstructions are liable to be, on par or slightly less. And so it might, anyway, the main point was that to the extent that information is provided, it gets used. And then to the extent that click members can rank them consistently across all the projects, it results in a defensible, defensible is too light a word. It results in a good ranking process regardless, because we're ranking projects consistently using the criteria that's available. Members aren't, applying the criteria one way to one set of projects and differently to another set of projects. So I just want to give a little bit of background there on what the Human Development Task Force had just discussed, because we're kind of going at this task force by task force right now. There is an option for, I'll say, somebody to, do all of those costs, do all the point assignments for all the projects, and just have Click use that one person's calculations across all the projects. In the interest of staff time, I may ask whether or not the committee knows of somebody who has actually already completed the bulk of this work. And maybe that can be a good starting point for the committee, if the executive committee chose to just use that one person's rankings, evaluate, their consistency, and then apply them across all of the rankings. I know that staff are going to be really pressed again, Robert, to try and turn around good rankings for this.
Robert, I'm going to stop you there. We're starting to run over. I just want to make a couple of comments on this, and then I'm going to recognize the 3 people in queue before we adjourn. Number one, I don't think we want to use point ratings that are assigned by any other person. I think what we want to do is share what the number is, what the percent of cost savings is as a percent of the total project, and allow each member to make their own decisions about how many points to give that or not give it. And I would agree that where the information is missing, that exposes the people that have requested that money to each rater making their best assessment of just what you said. If it's new infrastructure, clearly there's going to be added operating costs, and you just come up with whatever number you want to use because that's all the information you have. And if it's clearly one where there's savings but there's no data there, maybe you give it a 0 if they can't be bothered to put that information in. This is probably not, unless the project's right on the line, it's not going to sway it one way or the other. The other thing I would just observe about this, I think is why it's important that one person do the interpretation. This is subject to interpretation, even though it's numbers. I'll give an example. The concrete street, 29th Street. If you look in that CBR, it says that project has a 60-year useful life, and that until it's done, they spend about $10,000 per mile patching it, and that street happens to be a mile. I don't think that means you take 10,000 and multiply it by 60 years, because clearly they start patching again well before it gets to 60 years. So you have to make some assumption. I mean, if I were doing it, I think I would just give it 30 years. Obviously it's not going to be 0 for 30 years and then suddenly go to 10,000. It's going to be linear, but to just give a rough estimate, that would be what I would probably do is multiply this cost savings of 10,000 per year over half of the useful life, because clearly they're going to start needing to again on a road like that. But that's just an example where we need to have one person do that instead of having 14 different or 33 different interpretations of that piece and then assigning points. That's going to create a lot of inconsistency and a lot of, duplicative work. All right, I'm going to recognize Matt and then Jeff, both in queue.
Thanks. Sorry, my comment doesn't address this. There was one comment here that I believe we tabled. It's on page 7, the off-street recreational and commuter path rehabilitation comment around doing a pavement condition index assessment on off-street paths. I believe it was tabled for it to be addressed later. While we were continuing on, I worked out some language that I would put forward to address what the concerns I raised. I'm guessing we don't have time to deal with that now, but is there someone I could send that to for consideration?
Yeah.
I forget what the next step was on that.
Yeah, Dan was going to author that one, so I would suggest that you get together with Dan via email and bring something forward that gets to me by next Tuesday, and I'll get it into the report as one that wasn't passed, but that we're forwarding on.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And John, I also wrote some language that I'll send to Dan.
Okay. Jeff, go ahead.
My comment on the cost, it's a 60-point swing, right? And well, I think I tend to fall on the HD viewpoint because of our time. So we did have the established deadline of the 20th, end of day, or 11:59 p.m. in my view. I'm supportive of extending it, but the executive committee is meeting Monday, and so we're going to again be in a sort of a time crunch. If we think we need to make a decision that we're just going to tell people, maybe the staff, and just like they do with the other rating category, we just have to get a decision quickly so people can do the bulk of their scoring, and then we add that other factor. So I think people are going to be running up against a huge time crunch again on the 27th, based on how long it takes for somebody to do this analysis on what 129 plus or minus projects.
So,
Yes, I was finding a lot of gaps in that information, but I was doing my best.
I would propose that Robert and Jeff stay on. We should probably adjourn this meeting. We're over, and if you guys have a few minutes, we can discuss this. And because I think the main thing is we need to make a decision today and get that information out to people so they know. So let me just go back to my script. I will ask members and staff if there are any other matters to come before this meeting. Seeing none, if not, and without objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, May 26th. Thank you, everyone. So with that, we are adjourned. Everybody can hop off if Jeff and Robert will stay on, and Neil if he wants to as well.